What's up, everybody? Welcome to some Black Blue Thopter Whir. Hope you're excited. Yeah, man, this is basically ever since they've unbanned Thopter Foundry combo, I've been kind of brewing with it in some form or fashion in Modern. One of the things that I've always noticed as far as a Thopter Whir deck is that it's always like the secondary win condition. So you've got like Gifts Thopter with the Unburial Rights package. I've seen some Grixis or Esper lists kicking around with Thopter Foundry as kind of like their stabilizing factor, but they're still pushing the Lightning Bolt and Kolaghan's Command and stuff like that. So, but the times I've played with the combo, I really enjoy it, and I feel like it's just needs to be pushed a little bit more in Modern. And so as far as this deck goes, we're basically making our win condition Thopter Foundry. If you're not familiar, the combo revolves around two cards. So we've got Thopter Foundry itself. One colorless, sacrifice a non-token artifact, create a 1/1 blue Thopter artifact creature token with flying, and then you gain 1 life. The other piece to the puzzle is Sword of the Meek. So it costs 2 mana, and it says whenever a 1/1 creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may return Sword of the Meek from the graveyard to the battlefield. So basically, if you're keeping score at home, what's going to happen is you activate Thopter Foundry on Sword of the Meek, it goes to the graveyard, that Thopter comes into the battlefield, you gain a life, and then it triggers Sword of the Meek out of the graveyard. So, long story short, for every mana that you have, you can make 1 Thopter, gain a life, and get Sword of the Meek back out, and just kind of rinse and repeat. So let's say you have 5 mana, that's 5 Thopters, you gain 5 life, and then you kind of stabilize from there. So when you're playing the deck, you're trying to get into a spot where basically you can kind of just stabilize with the combo. There's going to be a lot of times where you get down to like 3 or 4 life, and then you can just kind of get the combo up and rolling and slowly build your life total back up. Now, it's a really fun way to kind of play a game of Magic, but sometimes you just don't have that final punch to close it out. So one of the things that they printed recently, Wizards did, was Whir of Invention. Let's start off with this. We're looking at triple blue and then improvise for our artifacts. Search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost X or less and put it onto the battlefield. This is a great way. We're running a lot of cheap artifacts to kind of search these combo pieces up. But what it also allows us to do is make the combo a win on the spot right then and there. And one of the cards that we can do that with is the Kark Clan Ironworks. So basically what's going to happen is if we have 3 blue mana, there we go. If we have 3 blue mana, we're going to be able to, in at least 4 artifacts, we can tutor up the Ironworks, grab it, and then once we sacrifice a Thopter, that's going to give us 2 colorless mana. And then we can use that mana to sacrifice the Sword of Meek. It's going to come back, we get that Thopter, and then we can sacrifice it again. So basically it allows you to just go infinite. I mean, if you're playing in paper Magic, you would say like make 1,000,000 Thopters, gain 1,000,000 life, and so. But when you're playing online, you kind of have to manually go through the process. But it's definitely a way to kind of speed the deck up because every time you sacrifice a Thopter, you're getting 2 colorless, and it's basically just rinse and repeat. So you can get into the spots where, let's say you're playing It's Burn or some other style deck, just gaining that infinite life is going to be more than enough for you to kind of close the game out. But another way that allows us to end the game right on the spot is Altar of the Brood. So whenever a permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent puts the top card of his or her library into their graveyard. So once you activate the Thopter Foundry, the Thopter is going to come in, you're going to gain a life, there's going to be an altar trigger, so your opponent's going to mill a card. Then when Sword of the Meek comes back onto the battlefield out of the graveyard, that's going to be another mill. So you can basically you can turn each 1 colorless mana, or not colorless, but any mana into 2, and your opponent milling 2 cards. When you combine that with the Ironworks with infinite mana, you can basically just mill your entire opponent out at instant speed with Whir of Invention. So this is kind of the supporting pieces to the Thopter Foundry combo, which allows you to just basically win the game right on the spot. Since we're running 4 copies of Whir of Invention in here, and one of the ways that we're going to get into a cheaper Whir is running some cheaper artifacts. We're running Mox Opal. Even if we don't have Metalcraft online, we can still tap it for the Whir of Invention due to the improvisability. Running 2 of those. We're also running Welding Jar. It helps us out in our Abrupt Decay matchups, Jund or Abzan. So if they do have Abrupt Decay, we can kind of regenerate our combo pieces and stabilize from there. We're also running Pithing Needle. The Whir of Invention is kind of almost basically like Court of Calling. It kind of turns this deck into a tutor artifact. So Pithing Needle, you're probably not going to want to run more than 1 in the deck, but it's always nice to have access to it because you can get into spots where, let's say you cast a Whir of Invention for 3. Whir of Invention says you can grab an artifact X or less, so you can actually Whir for 3, and then your opponent's not expecting a Pithing Needle, maybe on one of their fetch lands or something like that. They'll probably crack in response next time, but it's definitely a way you can pay for a bigger Whir and grab an artifact that costs less. We're also running Hope of Gearpoor. It has flying, sacrifice it until your next turn target player who was dealt combat damage by Hope can't cast non-creature spells. So this is one of those times where if you're playing against control or you're worried about an Abrupt Decay to disrupt your combo, you can swing them with Hope, activate it, have that ability on the stack, and let's say they do cast their piece of removal, you can Whir of Invention in response and then kind of combo off from there. depending on which piece of the Sword of the Meek puzzle you have. But usually just having the Ironworks is more than enough to close the game out because you gain infinite life. So that's kind of the cheap way to get the combo up and running. And then Ironworks, we're pretty much always going to tutor it up, but you can get into spots where you can just hard cast it and wait till you get the combo down and then kind of combo out from there. Alright, so we covered the Thopter Foundry combo, Whir of Invention, its role in the deck, cheap ways to make the Whir of Invention cheaper, the Ironworks. We're also running some utility artifacts. We've already covered those with the Pithing Needle, Hope of Gearpore. We're also running 2 copies of Ensnaring Bridge, so it's not that crazy to have 3 artifacts down, 3 mana up, then we can tutor up Ensnaring Bridge to kind of stop our opponent from swinging in, to allow us enough time to get, like, find a Whir of Invention to kind of combo off from there. Outside of the utility artifacts, that's about it. The utility spells that we're running in here, we're running 4 copies of Fatal Push. We're just really looking to keep our opponent down turns 1 through 4 so we can get the combo up and rolling. Running 4 copies of Seer Vision, just basic filtering. Running 4 copies of Hand Disruption, 3 Inquisition of Kozilek, and 1 Thoughtseize. And we're also running Collective Brutality, 2 copies of Collective Brutality. It's a good way for us to take care of the early creatures, make them discard maybe something that would disrupt the combo. And then it's also a good way for us to get some cards out of our hand if we need to get an Ensnaring Bridge down pretty low. So you can basically go empty hand Hellbent with Ensnaring Bridge out there, and then your card draw will allow you to swing in with your Thopters for that turn. So you can get into spots where you can just dump your entire hand out to a Collective Brutality to make sure you have an Ensnaring Bridge that's going to stick around. That's the utility spell. Oh, we're also running 2 copies of Muddled the Mixture. Great. You know, in a pinch, it's a counter-target instant or sorcery spell. You know, that's going to win you a few games every once in a while. But we're mainly using it for its transmutability, and that's going to apply to our sideboard too. At transmute for 3, discard this card, search your library for a card with the same converted mana cost, and that's going to fit in perfectly to our Collective Brutality, our combo pieces, Thopter Foundry, and Sword of the Meek, and a few other things that really opens up our sideboard too. So we got Muddled the Mixture. Let's say that for some reason part of our combo piece gets exiled out of the graveyard. We don't have that anymore. We're also running 2 copies of Tezzeret. Tezzeret is basically our backup plan for this deck. We're looking to get down a nice little Ensnaring Bridge, and then hopefully just keep pumping up Tezzeret to get in the spots where we can get in the -4 ability and make them lose a bunch of life. So Tezzeret is definitely the plan B in this deck. I found that Tezzeret, it's a good way to kind of stabilize a little bit, but it's not. This is not really a Tezzeret deck. It's in here because it has synergy with our artifacts, but we're mainly pushing the Thopter Foundry combo, and it's just nice to have a secondary game plan. Just because if you get one of your combo pieces exiled out of the graveyard with like Surgical Extraction, or I was trying to think of Surgical Extraction. So if you get Surgical Extracted, you don't really have much going on. You just got a few Sword of the Meeks, which is not really going to do you much. You can't get into a spot to where Thopter Foundry can start sacrificing your artifacts. You can kind of grind it out that way, but Tezzeret definitely gives us a nice little bonus. I did test out the new Tezzeret, and it's not too bad in the deck, but definitely this Tezzeret Agent of Boldness is where you want to be with it. But that's basically the deck in a nutshell. Let's go over to the sideboard. We're running Tormod's Crypt. It's a good way for us to tutor for 3 mana. We don't have to pay anything, get it down, exile a graveyard to say we're playing against Dredge. We're also running Grafdigger's Cage, 1 copy of this. We're running 2 Spell Skies as a way in the Obzon or Jund matchup. Running 2 copies of Dispel in the control matchups, and Echoing Truth is your best friend in the sideboard. We're running 3 copies of this because Rest in Peace and Stony Silence completely shut the deck off. I mean, we just can't get anything done with that up. Basically, if we get Stony Silence, we're on the Tezzeret game plan, and so we kind of have to draw into it and get a nice little board state developed. But with Echoing Truth, let's say our opponent does get down to Stony Silence. You can get down the Sword of the Meek, the Thopter Foundry. You can even get down the Ironworks and get into a spot where you're going to bounce that Stony Silence back to their hand, and then you can combo off at the end of their turn and have enough Thopters kind of swing in for lethal. So definitely don't want to skip on the Echoing Truths, and even if you're not playing against white, you almost always want to bring in at least 1 Echoing Truth. That way you just don't catch a random Pithing Needle. And since we have Muddled the Mixture, it allows us to kind of search it up through there. So just as a good practice with the deck, you always want to at least bring in 1 copy of Echoing Truth when you go to sideboarding. We're also running Black Sun Zenith. It's a good way for us to utilize the Muddled Mixture in there. And plus it gets shuffled back into the library. So hopefully if you can get into spots where maybe you get down Ironworks, you can take care of a few more creatures. But having the tutorable board wipe is really good with Muddled the Mixture. Russ, and you know, the sideboard on a deck like this is completely dependent upon your meta. I've got Devour Flushing here as a way to kind of battle against Death Shadow. There's a lot of it on Magic Online. But really, the core of your sideboard is going to be 4 or 5 artifacts that help you. And then, you know, your Dispels, 3 Echoing Truths. And then you're kind of left with, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, you're left with about 6 cards that are just going to be completely dependent upon your meta. I am running 2 Yahini's Expertise that allows us to kind of clear the board out if we're playing against a bunch of burn, like Naya Burn or something like that. And then we can also cast one of our combo pieces off Yahini's Expertise. But yeah, the deck's a lot of fun. It is certainly not tier 1, but the way I approach modern deck building is, you know, we have an idea. You know, how far can we push the Thopter Foundry combo by itself? And this is what I come up with. So if you have any suggestions for the deck, hop in the comments, let me know. I respond to every single comment on my channel and on this channel too. So I very much just want decks to be played and then kind of hammer them out into a finished product. So I have a lot of deck ideas, and it helps to get a fresh set of Magic eyes. So if you have any suggestions, or you want to kind of bump up a few numbers or go minus on a few numbers, hop in the comments, let me know, and we'll kind of go from there. It's always fun building decks, but I think that's going to be it. I have 4 gameplay videos for you. I've got 2 good matches. There was a couple matches where I made a few misplays, but I went ahead and posted them up because we kind of put the deck through the ropes. So, but other than that, I think that's going to wrap up the deck tech, and yeah, look. Catch out those gameplay videos. All right, catch you later. Bye.